inside Hollywood's biggest night. All this week on HLN's Morning Express with Robin Meade starting at 6.
It's like, wow, we were waiting for something like this to happen, you know. He would have a trip switch and, you know, he'd get violent and angry and he'd fight with people and he'd cause a lot of problems. And, I mean, that's the incident with me and him was because he was drunk at a party and he started shouting and swearing on the phone. He's not scared. If I want to come down there, he knows where I am and blah, blah, blah. But I left it, you know. I said to him, if you got a problem, I'll see you when I see you, and, you know.
That was South African sports journalist Graham Joffe. We're going to speak with him in just a few minutes. But first, in public, Oscar Pistorius was a hero to many people, overcoming seemingly insurmountable obstacles to make the Olympics. But in private, he had a history of temper flares, ups, and gun incidents. Into that life came Riva Steenkamp, an accomplished, talented woman who ironically had crusaded against domestic violence.
Riva Steenkamp was becoming known as one of South Africa's sexiest women, on her way to becoming a world-class model. This video shows Riva posing for the cover of FHM, a hot monthly magazine. Hagen Engler was the editor of the South African edition.
She had, you know, beauty and intelligence, which is the double whammy.
Intelligent enough to get her law degree. Kerry Smith remembers a much different-looking Riva when they were law school classmates.
Those pictures of her, when you knew her, she does look different to the Riva that, you know, I think Oscar fell in love with.
That, I think it's the whole modelling industry, where you have to weigh a certain amount and it's very superficial. People see this glossy, blonde-haired, beautiful-bodied woman, and that's what they think she is as well. And they don't realise what a fantastic person she actually is. She's not this dumb blonde who just stares at a camera all day and, you know, twiddles the little laces on the side, of her bikini. Very cliched saying, but when people say you're as beautiful on the outside as you are on the inside, that's Riva. She was even more beautiful on the inside. Really, she was.
Smith took these photographs of the aspiring model at a local beach. In those days, modelling was more of a hobby for Steenkamp than a serious profession.
Where she would always say, everyone has to remember that modeling's, it's not a career, because your beauty only lasts so long. You have to do something, you have to have something. That modelling mustn't be the first thing.
When Smith was in a relationship that became abusive, Steenkamp was there, pushing her to get out.
And she's saying, you know, get out. You can't sit and no woman can sit and accept being treated like that. And she was incredibly passionate about it.
Ironically, Riva became an advocate for women facing violence and abuse. According to the country's Medical Research Council, a woman is killed by her husband or partner every 8 hours in South Africa. Steenkamp and Smith talked about helping these victims.
She wanted to protect and save as many women as possible that she could from being abused. We always said that we wanted to establish a centre for women.
And that's what this case is about. I mean, Oscar Pistorius is accused of murder, but in the context of domestic violence is what this case is all about. Let me bring back in the Dream Team to talk about this, because let's remind folks again, it's not going to be a jury, so we're not counting how many women on the jury, how many men. It's one judge. That judge is a woman. This issue of domestic violence, how do you think it plays, and who does it favor going into this trial, Tanya?
Well, it will depend, of course, on what that evidence is and how competent that evidence is and how credible that evidence is. So obviously, his story about suspecting an intruder and shooting her accidentally becomes less credible if there is a history of domestic abuse between the two of them.
Now, what I just heard in that piece, though, was she had a friend who was a victim, and she told a friend to get out. Does that make it more or less believable that she, too, was a victim in this relationship?
Well, I think you kind of want to think, well, obviously, if she would have been involved in a relationship of domestic violence, she'd have got out, because that was the advice she gave. But I don't think you can ever judge anybody based on the circumstances they're in. I mean, everybody can look at another situation and say, you should do this. It's very different when it's your own life and it's your own situation. So I don't think we can, you know, say that, and I don't think the defense can use that to say, well, clearly he didn't abuse her because she would have left him. I don't know that that's as simple an answer as that.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you there because it gets very, very complicated. You know, from the outside looking in, it may be more simple, but I've just spoken to way too many victims that it's not that simple. But this allegation, shooting 4 times, I mean, that's the ultimate in domestic violence, right? The allegation here. Tanya, do you believe that there has to be some evidence of a history for a judge to believe that all of a sudden this could happen? You know, the 2 alternatives. There's a history of domestic violence, that he's prone to this, and then he finally kills her, versus no history, and then all of a sudden one night he blows up and he kills her.
Well, you know, we always say that motive isn't necessarily an element you have to prove in a criminal case. But when you're trying to understand why 2 people who seemingly loved each other...
Yeah, Valentine's Day.
On Valentine's Day, one of them ends up dead, you want to know why that happened. So if there is a history of abuse, that could answer that question for you. If it's not there, then his explanation might be more plausible in that, listen, I didn't mean to kill her, it was done by mistake.
All right. Now, let me try to explain what a celebrity power couple these 2 were. Oscar Pistorius.